Hello, my name is Raquel Garcia, and for my analysis three, I decided to make a PowerPoint presentation based on the three articles that we were assigned. So after reading the three articles, one of the things that really stood out to me were the students in these studies in these parts of research, and so a lot of that has to do with myself as well because I do have an ADHD diagnosis, and it didn't come until later in my adult life, actually this last year. So I really related to these articles, and I really had a good time actually researching and learning a little bit more about my diagnosis and things that I do for myself and things that I now actively do for my students. Not really knowing why I did them, I just knew that they worked. But now that I know that, now that I know what it is that I have, I see that all of those practices, they help me as a person, but they also help my students as well. So I do want to talk about those literacy practices for students with ADHD, but we will be focusing on a like the social cultural perspective. So first we start off just explaining what it is. And so ADHD is also known as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. It is characterized by inattentiveness, hyperactivity, or impulsiveness. Oftentimes it's to a degree where it does interfere with the ability to complete, simple everyday tasks. And this can especially be a problem for school age children. So ADHD and school. So after reading these three articles, I know the one that I really enjoyed was with Adam, which was the acquisition of a child by a learning disability by McDermott. And so although ADHD is not necessarily considered a learning disability, research does indicate that anywhere between 30 and 50% of children that have been diagnosed with ADHD also do have a sort of learning disability, whether that be, dyslexia or anything other. And the two conditions do interact and they make learning a challenge. And this is coming from the National Institute of Mental Health. So here I added a pie chart, just indicating, the different types, the subtypes of ADHD, because there are some that are predominantly hyperactive or impulsive. There's another one that's predominantly inattentive, and then the combined type, which is the majority of people who are diagnosed, is a combination of the two. ADHD from a social cultural perspective. So ADHD can be viewed from a socio-cultural perspective because of course it's influenced by culture and societal factors. So as I was reading these articles, I did, dig a little deeper and found some other interesting articles. And it was talking about, like, we'll get into that right now. Let me finish reading. The expectations and demands placed on individuals in certain cultures may contribute to the development of these symptoms, and also social and economic factors such as poverty, discrimination, and even access to healthcare, of course, impacts the prevalence and treatment of ADHD in the different communities. So again, we continue with a social cultural perspective. So every culture has children with ADHD, whether they've been diagnosed or not. A lot of that has to do with, the area where the child resides. So this was from another article that I found. It says research has found that classrooms in Thailand have comparatively fewer students with ADHD because children are expected and trained to behave and talk quietly in public in Thailand. Likewise, East Asian countries have lower rates of ADHD diagnoses, mainly due to their cultural background. So we see that they do value, education, harmony, loyalty to the country, to their parents, to their elders. So a lot of those factors contribute to having less and less students being diagnosed with ADHD, in comparison to, the U.S. Classrooms in the United States. This is coming from Moon 2003, the article. So another article that I did find was talking about the same, ADHD, but with the stigma that it comes with being a Latino. And so, although many families in the United States experience, this stigma when a member of their family has a mental illness, Latino families with ADHD children reported that their stigma was exasperated. It was just more so because of their culture, which clearly signifies um, in the importance of good behavior. And they oftentimes, this article showed that oftentimes parents are just generally just concerned as being perceived as poor parents because of their child's behavior. And so obviously, this is something that happened to me because growing up, I had all of these, obvious symptoms of ADHD. And you learn to manage as time goes further. But I mean, I didn't come into my diagnosis until I was in my 30s. So all of these behaviors that I was exhibiting in school and problems that I had, learning or in school, were, oh, it's just like how they say it's la chiflada. And so it was just a lot of, I didn't know. And it was also that my parents were not aware, because it wasn't something that was frequently talked about. It wasn't something that was out in the open, I think more so than it is now. So of course that obviously affected me. I mean, as a child, I had all of these issues, and I had all of these, same problem year after year with the teachers, that she won't sit down, that she's very smart but she talks a lot. She's very active, and so things like that. And it was mainly because of our culture. We were led to believe that things like that were, it was just chiflazon, like it's not something that exists or is real. um, so based off of that information, I did find, some social cultural literacy strategies or practices that we can implement into the classroom. So these approaches, they're used to help individuals develop an awareness and understanding of the social and cultural aspects of language use. So some of the strategies I found were these, and there was plenty more, but I just focused on these three. So the first one is promoting the use of diverse texts. The second is encouraging dialogue and discussion. And the third one is providing opportunities for authentic language in real world context. So obviously, these three practices can enhance and help individuals become more effective communicators in their language. And so, along with these strategies, I also found some literacy strategies for students specifically with ADHD. So, some of the strategies, and I found more, but right now I'll show you how I was able to connect them. So, creating a structured and predictable learning environment is very effective for students with ADHD. Providing opportunities for movement and hands on learning, using visual aids and graphic organizers, breaking down tasks into smaller steps, and also incorporating technology to support learning. So I've been doing all of this for many years. Um, and I mean, obviously, my first couple of years is this wasn't something that I would do. Nobody really knows what they're doing the first year's teaching, but I've come into a consistent pattern, a consistent routine, because I know that they are effective. So I do have a lot of structure. I do have a lot of visual aids. I have a lot of color, like coordinating things. I have a lot of like arrows and pictures and things, that because I teach pre-K. Um, and even when I taught, first grade, kinder, all of these things help not only kids that have a diagnosis, kids that maybe have been undiagnosed, and even just like lower, like younger children in general. All of these strategies are extremely effective, but even more so for students that have that ADHD uh, diagnosis. So the question is, how do we combine these two? How do we combine the social cultural practices that help students with their language and communication? And how do we merge those with ADHD practices? And so I was able to connect the two. So the first social cultural practice was promoting the use of diverse texts. So one way that we can merge the ADHD practice is using visual aids, graphic organizers, and the what was called chunking strategies. I also found this in one of the articles, and it's basically just if the child has to read an article or a book or a passage, whatever it may be, you just you chunk it, and instead of having the child read the entire thing, you read section by section, maybe a chapter at a time. And of course, you use a lot of visual aids and graphic organizers to kind of organize the reading into, categories, into whatever it is that you want to categorize it in. And these strategies, obviously, you can use them with many texts. And so this is you diversify your text, but you also connect it using these visual aids, graphic organizers, and chunking strategies. So this is one way that we can merge the social cultural practices along with the ADHD practices. Another way, another social cultural practice was encouraging dialogue and discussion. Obviously, getting kids talking is a great way, to promote language. And so this obviously can be done with the ADHD practice. So encouraging dialogue and discussion, but allowing them to, move around and take charge of their own learning. So while they are engaging in dialogue, allowing them to kind of like get up, go talk to their peer, move around the room. And so that kind of allows the child who does have ADHD to kind of get their body moving, and kind of get some of that energy out, because they do like to move a lot. So that's one way that they can merge the two. The third one was providing opportunities for authentic language in real world contexts. And so one of the strategies you can use, like an ADHD strategy, you can use and merge it along with this practice, is just providing real life scenarios, role playing exercises, and that allows the students to apply their language skills in a meaningful way. So this is another way that you can kind of merge the social cultural practice along with the ADHD practice, and kind of merge them all together. So there are multiple ways that you can do this. I know I kind of picked three. I hope I'm not rambling on. I really did enjoy reading all of these articles, learning a little bit more about these practices and how we can include them into our classroom, into our daily classroom with our students, no matter what grade we teach. This is obviously something very important, and it has been something very important to me, seeing as how I would have this. And so now I can kind of take a step back and see what kind of teacher I might have wanted for myself as a child, and that's kind of how I try to go about my teaching. Just kind of looking back at what is it that I would have wanted as a teacher, as a student when I was younger. What kind of teacher would have I wanted? And so that's kind of like my philosophy as I'm going along and teaching my students. Um, ADHD and culture. So obviously, it is extremely important to recognize that different cultures may have various, attitudes and beliefs about learning disabilities. And like I said, although ADHD is not specifically a learning disability, I mean, obviously, it interferes with your ability to focus, your ability to sustain attention in a classroom, and of course, that is going to negatively impact the way you retain information. So we talked about how some cultures view learning disabilities as a sign of weakness, while other cultures might see it as a gift or a unique way of learning, and maybe just embrace it a little more. So it is important to approach these topics of learning disabilities with, we talked about previously in articles we've read, cultural sensitivity and just general respect for everybody's individual differences. So as we begin to understand these cultural perspectives, then we can kind of begin to form effective intervention strategies and accommodations for individuals that have learning disabilities or ADHD, dyslexia, other things along those lines. So here's just my slide with the resources that I used. And that is all. So, like I said, I really did enjoy these. And as I was reading these articles, it was almost just kind of looking back at my childhood when I was reading the research, especially Adam. So looking at how they just struggled going along, trying to just complete assignments, trying to just kind of catch up on the reading. It did bring a lot of memories of my childhood, of my education, as a student, as a young child. So I really did enjoy these, and I hope you also enjoyed my presentation. Thank you.